They are destroying Magic Kingdom. Those are just some of the things that Disney fans have said about the latest controversial Disney changes. So I turned to Instagram to poll Disney fans about how they actually feel about some of these wild changes coming to the Disney parks. The results might surprise you. Let's start with Monsters, Inc. coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios. Disney announced at D23 that Hollywood Studios will be getting the first ever Monsters, Inc. land, where humans will be invited to step into Monstropolis and even head inside the Monsters, Inc. factory to ride on a Doors coaster, where you get to fly through the Doors section of the factory, just like Mike and Sully do with Boo in the movie. The concept art has teased some other interesting things like really exciting larger-than-life monster ice creams and Harryhausen's The Sushi Restaurant. On the AllEars.net Instagram, I polled our audience about how we really feel about Monsters, Inc. coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios. 56% said excited, but please don't kill the Muppets. 38% said, so excited, I don't care what has to close. 5% said, I don't even want it if it kills the Muppets. And 1% said that they don't like it at all. So as you might have guessed, one of the predictions for where this land is going is at Muppets Courtyard, where Muppet Vision 3D is currently located. This is one of potential locations for this land, but it has not been confirmed by Disney where the land will be going. And there are certainly some other spots in Disney's Hollywood Studios. As Scartoon Spin puts it, if they take out Muppets, we riot at dawn. Now, in this video, I'm going to be bringing my predictions based on everything that I know as a Disney theme parks expert to help us talk a little bit about what we can expect with these expansions. Now, we certainly do have concerns that it could be Muppet Courtyard. The size of the area in the concept art looks like it could be Muppet's Courtyard, and that area, though it does have a show that is much loved and the theater does tend to be full, it also has two less than popular restaurants, and that would make it pretty easy for Disney to adapt those into new restaurants without having to build entirely new structures. That said, we've got some quotes that talk a little bit about another potential area that this coaster and land could go. Corinne Frost 13 says it would make way more sense in Launch Bay, all Pixar together. And Abby Mole says, I think it would go perfectly in Animation Courtyard, but what happened to the Ariel show? So yes, Animation Courtyard is another major theory for the potential location of this land. Animation Courtyard right now is home to the Disney Junior Dance Party, the Disney Junior Meet and Greets, and Star Wars Launch Bay, a very large building that pretty much houses Star Wars meet and greets and a few Star Wars exhibits. This area in general is a little bit less than popular. Now, the question here also asks about what happened to the Ariel show. There is a new Little Mermaid show coming to Disney's Hollywood Studios. It will be called The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure and is coming to the theater in Animation Courtyard that used to house the old Little Mermaid show. Now, this show might be the biggest argument for why Animation Courtyard would not be the home for Monsters, Inc. because this show is absolutely still coming. In fact, at D23, the same event where we found out about the Monsters, Inc. land, we also found out about costumes and some of the concept art for this new Little Mermaid show. So that is absolutely full steam ahead coming in the plans. However, Monsters, Inc. land is planned for a while out from now, whereas the Little Mermaid show is launching relatively soon. So the question is, maybe the Little Mermaid show will get its run and then get transitioned out of circulation for Monsters, Inc. That doesn't seem likely considering historically how long stage shows run in Disney World, but it is possible. Still, this area could be a contender for Monstropolis because it is right next to Toy Story Land and the current Pixar Place Courtyard, which makes it all Pixar all together. So that could be a contender as well. One of the biggest things we have to think about with where this land is going to go is that coaster. We did see a model of the coaster at D23 and it was a very specific size and seemed to fit into a very specific building. To me, that signifies that it's possible that this coaster was built in reaction to the amount of space they're going to have for it. And there's a reason that it's kind of layered all on top of each other and in this smaller sized building. However, that does not indicate that it is an existing building like the Muppet Vision 3D building, or as some folks have said, Rock and Roller Coaster. It could just mean that that is the amount of ground space they're going to have to build this. So not clear yet where this is going to go, but it definitely could go in one of those two spaces. It also could go in a space that doesn't replace anything, such as taking out some of the cast parking or even expanding the borders of Hollywood Studios. Although it does seem more likely that some of the current dead space of Hollywood Studios would be transformed. From Alyssa with Love has said, why so long to create something for this IP? The OG movie came out 23 years ago. And I find this to be very funny. This is kind of a long-running IP to be building something about, but Monsters Inc. has retained popularity this long, so I think that that's a really good indication of why Disney thought it was time to build a land. With Monsters Inc. merchandise still holding popularity and Monsters University a rousing box office success a few years ago, Monsters Inc. does seem to be one of those properties that has a long-standing existence and that the audiences will continue to love. Morgan Mears said, the door ride has lived in my imagination for a ride since I was a kid. So excited for it. I absolutely agree with this. I know that for me, my whole life when someone was like, what's your dream Disney ride? My two answers have been the doors from Monsters Inc. in the form of a roller coaster, which we are now getting, and a Kronk and Yzma ride, which, you know, Villain Land? We can hope, we can dream. Okay. Kira M.R. Barker said, surprised by the suspended coaster, although I love them, it means adding lockers. I hadn't even thought of this, that it likely does mean we are going to get lockers for this attraction in Hollywood Studios. Suspended coasters makes it a lot harder for you to put your bag at your feet because your feet are dangling. So I guess that this ride building will have to have lockers. We've seen a very successful locker system at Tron Light Cycle Run, but that is more space that will have to be taken up in the queue area of this ride or outside of the attraction. So it will be interesting to see. As _ Megan Renee says, if there is not a Harryhausen's, I'll kick something. And you know what, Megan? I'll join you. I want Harryhausen's so bad. You might remember Harryhausen's as the sushi restaurant in Monsters Inc. where Mike and Celia go on a date, and then there's a 2319 because Boo is there and it's all very dramatic. But I really would love like a hyper themed sushi space. We have good sushi in Disney World in Epcot over at Shikisai Sushi Izakaya, and there's absolutely amazing sushi at Morimoto Asia in Disney Springs. But I think it would be so fun to do some monster themed sushi rolls and to have like a hyper themed spot with really dramatic theming all around and then still delicious sushi. So Megan, you call me when they say that they're not doing Harryhausen's, and we'll kick something together. Our next topic is perhaps the single most controversial news that came from D23 and the days after, and the results of our poll might surprise you. So Disney did announce that Cars would be added to Frontierland, not in the form of Radiator Springs, but instead in the form of the cars venturing outside of Radiator Springs and into the Great American West. The concept art appears to show an attraction much like Radiator Springs Racers that instead goes through Yosemite-like landscapes, beautiful American West landscapes, and they've also teased a ride for Little Racers as well, but not with many details. Now the catch is that this ride was announced to replace Tom Sawyer Island, the Rivers of America, and therefore the Liberty Bell Riverboat. This is a massive and historic portion of Magic Kingdom, so expectedly, responses have been mixed. Now in our poll, 52% said that they love the idea of Cars and they don't care how it changes Frontierland. 36% said that they were excited but sad about the rivers and Tom Sawyer Island. This is where I fall. And 12% said, I don't like it at all. So really interesting here. I think that the naysayers have been the loudest. If you go online, you hear a lot of people freaking out over the loss of the Rivers of America in particular, and many freaking out over the loss of Tom Sawyer Island. But 52% of those that we polled did say, well, don't really care how Frontierland changes. This is gonna be an exciting addition. So let's talk a little bit more about those specific reactions we've seen. Aaron KCT said, if people want Cars Land, go to DCA in Anaheim. And I totally get this. This definitely feels like another instance of Disney doing something they've already done in this park. However, with these D23 announcements, Disney has shown an explicit interest in not doing exact replicas of lands that they have elsewhere. Instead, they seem to be capitalizing on the success of certain IP lands while creating a different chapter of that land. Which is why we aren't in Radiator Springs. Instead of being in Radiator Springs, we get to see the cars in a whole new setting. A similar thing is happening with Pandora in Disney's California Adventure, which we will talk about in just a minute. Now, the fact of the matter is that folks that love Cars Land in Disneyland or can't make it to Disneyland to experience Cars Land will have another chance to experience a Cars area in Disney World. And it won't be exactly the same, so they're still a draw to go to the other park. And Pant USO says, curious about the visual aspect from Haunted Mansion to Cars Land transition. I am also curious about this because the rivers go right by the side of the Haunted Mansion queue. So Imagineers are going to have their work cut out for them in making that transitional sight line from Haunted Mansion and into Frontierland there. But I absolutely think that we've seen them do this well. We've seen them encapsulate lands well where they don't have an effect on the rest of the park. Pandora is a pretty great example, even though you can see those floating mountains from certain places. So I'm optimistic. But this is definitely a concern I have as well, because you don't want to change the character of Liberty Square necessarily when you're changing the character of Frontierland. As Tesla Coil put it, when's the last time someone was excited for Tom Sawyer's Island? And I'll tell you, it was recent and it was me. But the one reason that we are excited about Tom Sawyer Island here on the AllEars.net team is because no one goes there. So it is a great place for us to sit in the quiet, have meetings, take a break, which is definitely true for other folks as well. There are plenty of guests who have expressed that Tom Sawyer Island is a much needed escape from the hustle and bustle of Magic Kingdom, and especially those who have kids and adults who may have sensory issues, getting over to Tom Sawyer Island can be a much needed relief. So that is a big bummer that we are going to be losing that area. However, no one really goes to Tom Sawyer Island. This is a massive use of Magic Kingdom real estate between the island and the ferry boat, two relatively unpopular attractions, and the river, which though beautiful, doesn't help suck anybody up into it. It is just there to look at, and it doesn't help us get people out of the walkways. Which brings me to a comment I really liked from Benjamin Johnson, 1923. He said the capacity and usage of cars will giant over the current lack of popularity for the island. One common response to both Villains Land and Cars Land is that they will just make Magic Kingdom even more crowded. In fact, Cars Land in particular, what we're talking about right now, and Villains Land, just gives crowds more places to go. So instead of being in other lines or being out in the pathways, a lot of folks are going to be in Cars Land, where right now maybe 50 people are sucked up on the Liberty Bell and 100 people on Tom Sawyer Island. That it doesn't even put a dent in the crowds that are wandering around Magic Kingdom, where the potential thousands that can be sucked up every hour into Cars Land could make the rest of the park feel a lot more reasonable, especially after that initial excitement dies down. Speaking again of aesthetics, Jennifer Wartick said, I am just curious how it will look without water, and the dock was the best little shortcut. I'm so sad about the dock. That for me is something that I am very worried about here, and I hope they really consider with the plans for the Cars area, because that dock is how I get between Frontierland and everywhere else almost every time I'm in Magic Kingdom. It's a perfect shortcut because the crowds all stick to the main pathway, and typically, if the parade is happening, it's the only way to get in and out of Frontierland without getting caught up in parade crowds. So I'm really hoping that a shortcut like this is still incorporated, that crowd flow is just as good or improved. And it absolutely could be. This is an entire new area of land that is getting added to the park. That's way more pathways that people can use that were previously occupied by just river. So though I am really, really bummed that we're gonna miss out on that water feature and the tranquility of it, I am excited for it to potentially suck up more people out of the rest of Magic Kingdom, which often feels just a little bit too crowded no matter where you walk. Mike Flynn says, I don't know why this does nothing for me excitement-wise. Maybe one day if I have kiddos. And this is a great point that I really wanted to talk about. A lot of the folks that have responded well to Cars Land have said that this is something that their kids will absolutely love. Now, princess-loving kiddos have had something to do in Magic Kingdom for a long time. There are a lot of fairy tale and princess-geared attractions, but there haven't been as many attractions geared toward those kids that maybe don't gravitate towards the princesses. So a lot of folks have said that their kids, their sons, are really going to love Cars Land, and having this area just means more places for the family to have a good time in Magic Kingdom. But of course, one of the reasons this has been the most controversial piece of news is, as QNZ703 says, they are destroying the history and feel of Magic Kingdom by getting rid of the riverboat. The The riverboat and Tom Sawyer Island are both classic attractions, and every Disneyland style park around the world has a water feature like this. So it is the first time that a Disneyland style park has departed from that original structure. However, that departure has already occurred in a couple of ways otherwise, particularly in the breaking of the wheel and spoke. Disneyland and Magic Kingdom after it were designed as a wheel and spoke park. So you've got a wheel of lands and little pathways that lead to each land going in from the center where Cinderella Castle is in the Magic Kingdom case. This actually was broken kind of all the way back with Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in Magic Kingdom because it is so far back and there is no spoke onto Frontierland. So it kind of broke there, but that pattern was absolutely broken in Disneyland Park with the addition of Galaxy's Edge. So we've already reached a point where we have kept moving forward past the wheel and spoke and the original structure of these Disneyland style parks, especially here in the United States. So it's definitely a departure to remove this feature, but they have made successful departures before. Galaxy's Edge is extremely popular in Disneyland Park, even though original criticisms and criticisms to this day say that it doesn't fit or doesn't stick to Walt's original vision. It definitely stands that we can't say what Walt would think about these things because Walt unfortunately is not around these days. So the Disney company is sort of doing their best to help make their audiences happy and make the most money. And that's what companies do and that's what creatives do. So it's hard to say that Walt wouldn't approve of the character of Magic Kingdom, which was a common sentiment when I saw messages, because we just don't know. We do know that Walt said keep moving forward, and that is how I choose to look at these updates. I might not be super happy about losing the riverboat, something that I consider super nostalgic and a major character piece of Magic Kingdom. But I also know that I've read up on plenty of things that were taken out of Magic Kingdom in the 80s and the 90s that I'm sure people rioted about then. And I know that the stuff that has replaced those or been added on in those areas is stuff that is now my core memories of Disney World and things that I have built my love of Disney on. So I think the thing that makes me so okay with changes like this is that I know that those Cars-loving little kids are gonna grow up remembering all of the fun time they had in the Cars area and on the Cars attractions, and that's gonna be core places where they make memories with their families that one day they'll wanna share with their own kids and bring them to Disney World, and that to me is the most important thing. And sorry if I'm getting sappy, but I wanted to be honest in this video and I'm doing it. Next up, let's talk about Villains Land. Villains Land is a whole new land coming to Magic Kingdom. It's gonna be located beyond Big Thunder, so that is gonna be in the undeveloped area past Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and it will feature the villains. We don't know a ton about this, except that we do know that it will feature 2 attractions, as well as dining and shopping, and the concept art for this looks really incredible. So our poll results on Villains Land, 84% of those polled said that they are so excited. 10% said I'd like this, but not in Magic Kingdom, and 6% said not a fan. So let's dive into those sentiments a little more. Aubrey's Creative Corner said, I'm hoping they do a bridge or something to separate them because of the contrast, specifically in making sure that Villains Land feels separated from Frontierland. I'm excited about this and I'm optimistic about it because with recent years, Disney has done a spectacular job creating these transitional portals to different lands. Think about walking into Galaxy's Edge from around where Muppet Vision 3D is. It really transforms as you walk through there. The same thing with walking into Pandora. It's a gradual entrance before Pandora is revealed before you. So I'm hoping that this sort of practice they've been doing really pays off with Villains Land. The one thing I do want to discuss about that transition is that I do think construction is probably going to close the Walt Disney World Railroad for us again, and I am so bummed about that. The railroad was closed for a very long time with the construction of Tron Light Cycle Run over in Tomorrowland, and it feels like it's barely been back open, but Villains Land will be beyond the circle of the railroad, so I think they're gonna have to close it again so that they can build pathways and such. But I'm bummed. I love the railroad. Talking about the attractions, Abby Mole said, I would like to see a boat ride that takes you through Hades' underworld. And that sounds scary, Abby. That sounds really scary. My prediction for an attraction is that we are going to get a Bramble roller coaster themed after Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent. In the concept art, you can see in the top left, there is what looks like an outdoor coaster structure that looks like these brambles. So I'm hoping that that's what we get. That sounds really cool. It also looks like you would go past Maleficent and her castle. So that would be amazing. The other attraction appears to be a dark ride because it looks like it's this big house on the right, but unclear what it is. Although a Hades boat ride would be pretty cool. J. Grover Manthe said, wish there were new Epcot attractions. MK doesn't need more attractions the way Epcot does. And I think this is a super interesting take. Magic Kingdom has more attractions than any other park in Disney World. So even though Villains Land does feel right for Magic Kingdom and they have the land there, I do think that the other parks are more in need of more than Magic Kingdom is. That said, I think that Villains Land fits best in Magic Kingdom, but this is a good take. A lot of the other parks need more rides. Speaking of other parks, Busy Mom of 3 Girls said, wish we were getting a whole Villains park. And this was a common sentiment among the people who voted that Magic Kingdom wasn't the right place for this, but they did want it. I'm excited for getting it at all. And I'm sure a whole Villains park would be neat, but I do think that it would probably lock out a solid chunk of visitors with those kiddos who would be too scared. Where in this case, you can just not go in the Villains area with any Villainiverse littles. So, you know, I can see why they didn't do it. A couple little quick fires. J. Kirstein15 said, wish we had a timeline. Me too. Ed Curran 1137 said, Agic, which is funny because at All Ears we usually judge our coffees by saying they're magic or tragic, and if it's just in the middle we often say Agic. So you know. All right, Ed. And Melanson M says, hope it has a Scary Tale Hall meet and greet too. And I also want a regular Villains meet and greet or roaming villains. How cool would that be? Our next topic is the Tropical Americas. This one is actually another kind of controversial one. This is the land that is coming to Disney's Animal Kingdom, replacing Dino Land USA. And we've known for a bit that Tropical Americas would be replacing Dino Land, but we got a lot more details during D23. So in reaction to our Tropical Americas poll, 56% said they can't wait for this area to get updated, 40% said they're excited but sad about Dinosaur/Dino Land, and 4% said they don't like it at all. But let's talk a little bit more about what people think. Construction begins this fall and the land is set to open in 2027. The area will be called Pueblo Esperanza, which means Town of Hope, and it will be styled kind of like Harambe in the Africa section of Animal Kingdom. There will be 3 attractions in this land: the Encanto Casita attraction, an Indiana Jones attraction, yes, replacing Dinosaur, and a carousel with wood-carved versions of your favorite Disney characters. The Indiana Jones ride will feature a completely new story, and the Casita attraction will be set on the day Antonio got his animal-geared gift. So this has been controversial because Dinoland is much loved, Dinosaur is perhaps even more loved, and people are questioning how Tropical Americas fits into the animal theme of Animal Kingdom. Felicia Michelle 92 says, as long as it actually focuses on animals, I don't want DAC to lose its identity. And Jenny Sweet Girl says, I'm just not certain it fits overall in DAC, especially Indy. I can see this criticism, and I want to talk a little bit about how they do seem to be making this fit in DAC. The carousel, pretty obvious, it's Disney animals that are going to be featured on the carousel, so that makes sense, very animal geared. Encanto, they have chosen to focus on a very animal-geared part of Encanto, which is Antonio. Antonio's gift is that he can speak to animals, and you enter Casita on the day Antonio receives his gift, the finale of the ride being in Antonio's rainforest-themed room. So we will likely see a lot of animals, the whole Madrigal family, and I'm assuming some antics will ensue as Antonio speaks to animals for the first time. That sounds dramatic to have a child suddenly speaking to animals. So another animal geared ride. And they've even gone with an animal geared plot for Indiana Jones, which I think is really interesting. I wasn't expecting this, but you'll be venturing into these Mayan ruins because Indiana Jones has heard tell that there is a mystical creature within them. So once again, they've taken sort of an animal spin here. I think that the criticisms that especially Indiana Jones doesn't fit the animal theme are definitely valid, but I think that can be said of the additions to the Animal Kingdom that have become the most popular. Not only Pandora, which widely received this criticism as not fitting in, and though it still doesn't quite fit with the rest of Animal Kingdom, it is the most popular land with the most popular attractions, so numbers like that kind of speak for themselves. And then the other most popular attraction in Animal Kingdom is Expedition Everest, which at the time also received this criticism because there aren't any real animals featured in Expedition Everest. I feel like I'm outing myself as a Yeti denier. I don't know that I believe in the Yeti or cryptids in general. I don't think so, but I've seen some compelling Bigfoot arguments. I don't know. I think Yetis are real. And I think I can almost guarantee that a lot of the folks who have this criticism love Pandora and love Everest. And maybe that's not the case for everybody, but one thing that's for sure is that Disney has shown a willingness to depart from theme in the past, and it has paid off for them. So it's not a surprise that they're doing it again. TayDW0712 says, wish they'd retheme the Boneyard so Little still had a place to run and play. And I totally back this criticism of the new land. A lot of folks have been really mourning the loss of the Boneyard. And I think for a lot of us who don't have kids, or our kids have grown up, maybe don't care so much about the Boneyard and don't think about it a lot, but the Boneyard is poppin'. There are always kids in there running off their energy, and that is super, super important for families who are bringing littles to Disney World. This area is also home to Triceratops Spin, which is one of the only true kid-geared attractions. Now I think that between the Encanto ride, which will hopefully be for all ages, and the carousel, which will for sure be more kid-geared, plus the new Zootopia show coming to Tree of Life, which should be less scary than the Bugs Life show, that we will have plenty geared towards kids, but it does feel like a loss right now. And all of those things do not create areas that kids can just run and get energy out. So we'll see if Tropical Americas does include a space for this. There's a lot of green space shown in the concept art, so we can't rule out that there might be some area that kids can get energy out, but I don't think it's gonna be as all-encompassing as the Boneyard, and I do think it's a loss for families that desperately need their children to run some of their energy out. Nora Borealis 97 said, so excited for Encanto, but Indiana Jones better be incredible to replace Dinosaur. And I really do have to agree with this. Obviously, Dinosaur has the same ride system as the Indiana Jones attraction in Disneyland. Indiana Jones in Disneyland, incredibly popular ride. It's often at an hour-plus long wait, and it is just a favorite for many. So we kind of knew this was coming when we knew that Dinoland was on its way out. But Dinosaur is one of my favorite rides. For many years when I was a teenager, it was my favorite ride, and that's because for me, it was the only ride that I truly felt was thrilling and scary because it's so dark and it's so high action. So I fully agree. They better make Indiana Jones just as exciting, just as action-packed, just as fun, and just as funny as Dinosaur. It's breaking my heart that I'm losing Dr. Seeker, y'all. Breaking my heart. Luckily, I can always watch a YouTube video of that guy, so that's good at least. I did laugh at Melanson M's comment. My neck and back hope that Indy is a different style of ride. But I am so sorry, I do not think it's going to be. The ride building looks like it's not getting any adjustments for Indiana Jones, so I do think it will be the same ride system, maybe updated a bit or smoothed out, add some new effects, but I think your neck and back are out of luck. Mrs. Smith 56 says, give me some Colombian food as well. Arepas! And I have good news for you, Mrs. Smith. They are opening a hacienda in Tropical Americas that will be the largest quick service restaurant in Disney World. This looks like it's going to replace Restaurantosaurus, and it would shock me for them to have an Encanto ride where we might go past Julieta in a kitchen making arepas. Maybe, who knows? It might smell like arepas. They've been doing a lot of food smells lately. Think of the beignets on Tiana. And then not be able to go over to the hacienda and get some of Julieta's famous arepas. I want them as well. So everybody cross your fingers that they ball out on the menu at the hacienda. I have high hopes. Animal Kingdom food kind of rocks, and I think this is only gonna make it better. Our next piece of news is that Disney Cruise Line will be getting 4 new cruise ships, and that's on top of the currently in progress 4 new cruise ships. So already planned, we have the Treasure coming this year, the Destiny and the Adventure coming next year, and then the unnamed ship sailing around Tokyo at some point after that. Then Disney has now said there will be 4 more by 2031. So we're looking at a 13 ship fleet. Whew. For our poll, 38% said the more the merrier. 41% said they don't like it or they don't care. I think that most of those folks probably don't care, theme park people. 21% depends on where they sail. Emily N623 said, I'm hoping this means New York will get a permanent ship. Josh Tomorrow did say that this does mean that it will be ships sailing to more locations around the world. So I also hope New York gets a permanent ship, and I'm hoping that some ships go to Europe or maybe even Australia. Jenna Anderson 16 says, cool, but make it more affordable, LOL. Disney Cruise Line is absolutely one of the more expensive cruise lines. It's hard to say whether they will try to hold that luxury upkeep when they expand the fleet. I do think they will, because to me it sounds like the 4 more ship expansion means that their business is booming, and that means they probably aren't going to be looking to lower the price anytime soon. But at the same time, more availability could mean that demand is met and they lower the price a bit. I don't know. We'll be keeping you updated, so keep an eye on AllEars.net for all the cruise news, including the pricing. Disney Girl 771 said depends on the design. More Triton class? No thank you. This is a criticism that I totally understand as well, because the Triton class is the Disney Wish and Disney Treasure class, and the Disney Wish is not nearly as popular of a layout as the Disney Fantasy and Disney Dream were. Folks think the spaces get crowded and the way it's laid out just doesn't flow as well for crowds. I also hope that they do a new or different ship class for some of these ships, mostly just because I think all of the same could be kind of boring, and it doesn't give as much draw to want to sail on more than 1 or 2 ships. Raya Klein said, my family is thinking they might start retiring their older ships with these new ones. I definitely hear you, Raya. However, I think that they won't, at least at first, because Josh specifically said they want to have 13 ships sailing in their fleet by 2031. And I think that really this is a move to start competing with the much, much larger cruise lines like Royal Caribbean that have many, many, many more ships. So Disney will need to have more ships on the seas to be able to kind of stand in the same box as those bigger cruise lines. I think that's what this move is. However, I think it's a great point that this could give them the opportunity to take some of the older ships like Magic and Wonder out of rotation a little bit easier, to give them updates and refreshes without meaning that a full 1/6 of their cruise line or 1/5 of their cruise line is out of commission. Our next topic is Pandora in Disney California Adventure. Disney California Adventure will be getting a Pandora just like Disney's Animal Kingdom has, but with some differences. Animal Kingdoms features 2 attractions and is themed more to the first Avatar movie. The new Pandora over in DCA will be more themed to the 2nd and 3rd Avatar movies, so think more coastal, Way of Water, and then Fire and Ash when we see more of that. Plus, it will have 1 main attraction with a boat ride that looks like it's a pretty big departure from Navi River Journey, but I'll talk about that soon. On my poll, how do you feel about Pandora in DCA? 35% said excited and not worried about what will close. 28% said excited but will be sad if we lose a ride for it. 23% said I like it, but not if we lose something for it. And 14% said I don't like it at all. So this one's actually very controversial. A lot of folks are not fans. Some of the thoughts, Magic with Amy said, because Avatar has such a fan base. And I think that this is a common misconception that Avatar isn't beloved. Because a lot of folks think like, you don't really hear people talk about Avatar. Avatar doesn't seem to have fandom. But the Avatar movies, both of them, are some of the highest grossing movies of all time. And I think that that shows that Avatar is cared about by a lot of people. In fact, more people than have cared about any other movie ever, really, which is really incredible. And Pandora in Animal Kingdom remains the most popular area in the park. So I think that Disney is looking at numbers. And though the vibe we feel might be that Avatar doesn't have a huge fan base, the numbers show it absolutely does. Steven CA20 says, not a Navi River Journey copy. Hope they use the Pirates of the Caribbean Shanghai ride system. Me too, Steven, me too. The concept art does not look like Navi River Journey. This is supposed to be more action-packed, take you into dangerous parts of Pandora, out on the open ocean. It looks really, really all-encompassing, and the concept art absolutely does remind me of the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction in Shanghai. Widely considered one of the best Disney attractions in the world and one of the most immersive. So I think it would be really amazing for the United States to get a ride that has this technology. So I am also crossing my fingers. Pow Pow says, not the biggest fan of everything being the same in both parks, but it does look good. And I totally agree with this because I like that there's a reason for me to dream about going to another Disney park, even if it's not that feasible for me. I think it's cool they're not doing a carbon copy of Pandora. Similar to Cars Land, they're doing another section of Pandora that you can visit in Disneyland. So if you've loved Pandora in Disney World, you might want to swing over and do the Pandora in Disneyland if you ever get that opportunity. So that's pretty cool. I think it's nice that it's not another exact copy like Galaxy's Edge. When I'm walking around Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland, I feel like I'm at home. Like it feels exactly the same. So I'm glad they're at least switching it up, even though it is the same land that we're getting, same land type, land IP. Lauren Michelle says, if it takes over Hollywoodland, I'm fine, but if it takes over Grizzly Peak, I will riot. This was a common sentiment. Now, I think it's gotta take over Hollywoodland. But I hadn't thought of Grizzly Peak, and Grizzly Peak is so natural and already has a lot of the structures built that would feel more geared towards Pandora. But I really just can't imagine walking from Pandora into Grand Californian. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like it would fit. And I think that by far there are more dead areas in Disney California Adventure, specifically Hollywoodland, which is another of the rumored location this land might go. I was talking to some of our Disneyland team and they discussed that this does seem like it would come to Hollywoodland. There's just not a lot going in Hollywoodland anymore. And there's a theory even that it would take out the Hyperion Theater, which has had nothing there for a long time except for a very limited Steve Rogers show. Other than that, it was pre-COVID that it had a regular show running. On top of that, it would mean the loss of the Monsters, Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue ride. And this ride is pretty popular, but it is not like a mainstay of the park. So it would just be interesting to see if it's Hollywoodland, if it's Grizzly Peak. We'll, of course, keep you updated and make sure that you know everything, including how people are feeling when they do announce where Pandora will be going. Now, talking about theme again, Ashley Dunkley says, I don't think it fits the DCA vibes. Like, how is this related to California? Yeah, I agree. This has like nothing to do with California, but I think DCA's theme has gotten pretty loose because Cars Land is already like Route 66 is kind of a step to the east from California, and you've got Avengers Campus, which is like, I guess, set in California, but that's kind of it. Even Pixar Pier, the big connection is that it's the pier, so that's kind of the California vibe, and that Pixar movies are made in California. So I guess we can say that Pandora movies are made in California, but I don't even think they are. I bet James Cameron lives in California. Is that the connection? I don't know. I do think it's a stretch for theme, but you know, if they change the shape of the park, Hollywood Studios has a whole different vibe than it did when it was MGM. So that could be the direction they're going. Our next topic is the Coco ride in Disney California Adventure. This is a Coco themed boat ride that will take you into the world of the dead. It looks amazing from the concept art, and it is coming to Disney's California Adventure. The poll said that 55% were excited and not worried about what will close. 29% said yay, but will be sad if something I like closes. 11% said I like it, but not if I lose something I like. And 5% said I don't like it at all. Kayla Dasher 17 adds, what's a girl gotta do to get this in Disney World too? And you know what? I've been trying. I've been asking for years for them to put Coco in Disney World. It's a second to me for them to put Coco in Disneyland. So, you know, I'm glad of that. From Alyssa with Love says, it better not replace something. Where do you think it'll go? My theory for the location of the Coco ride is that it's going to go in the Fiesta area. That is in the corner at the end of Pixar Pier, the end that has the Inside Out attraction. There is just the big Fiesta area that does a lot of work for festivals, but is otherwise kind of just a very large food area. And I think it would make sense for them to add a ride building here and then just extend Pixar Pier because Coco is Pixar. So that's my guess, but they have not announced. RR Sims 31 said, happy for Quincy. I'm also happy for Quincy. Coco's my favorite movie. I'm so excited. Also in DCA, we got to talk about the new Avenger attractions. Disney announced 2 new Avenger attractions coming to Disney California Adventure. One is an Iron Man style attraction where you will fly on an arm like Iron Man. And the other is Avengers Infinity Defense, which is the big one that we've been waiting for. Looks to be the same ride system as the Peter Pan attraction in Tokyo Disneyland, Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure, which you can learn a little bit more in our Tokyo Disneyland content that is on the channel now. When polled, how do you feel about the new Avengers ride? 61% said so excited, 12% said I'm excited but wish for the original concept they teased, 2% said I don't like it, and 25% said I don't really care. The Iron Man flying ride will be called Stark Flight Lab, and construction will begin on these next year. Raymond Skywalker said about time. And this sentiment is because Avengers Campus has been open for quite a while, and the original intention was for Avengers Campus to have an e-ticket attraction that had you fighting alongside the Avengers on a massive battlefield in Wakanda. And that has just totally changed with the pandemic, and over time, the concept has pretty much been scrapped in favor of this new version. Kelly Ryan 22 said excited but worried about motion sickness. I hear you, Kelly. I'm a motion sick girly myself, and Avengers Infinity Defense does sound motion sickness inducing. However, I was lucky enough to ride Peter Pan's Neverland Adventure in Tokyo Disneyland before Fantasy Springs opened, and if we're right, and the ride system is the same. I had a pretty good experience motion sickness wise. I did not get sick riding it. I had an easier time sitting in the front of the ride vehicle, so that might be a hot tip. I get really sick on Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, and I did not get nearly as sick, or sick at all on the Peter Pan ride. So I would liken it a little bit to the experience of riding Flight of Passage, if that is familiar to you, that the visuals really line up with how you're moving so you don't get as sick. So I'm crossing my fingers for you. I am also worried about motion sickness at all times, and definitely in this instance. Mando810 said, getting 2 experiences is a welcome compromise for getting an e-ticket that never was. I love this outlook. I think it's awesome because I do think that the new ride version, the Infinity Defense ride, sounds a little less exciting than the original e-ticket concept. However, you're getting 2 rides instead of this one big one that couldn't come to pass, and sometimes that's just the case, that things can't turn out the way they're supposed to, which is something we do have to think about with all of this news. This is all just announced concepts, and there have been plenty of those that never panned out for Disney. So we have to keep in mind that that could be the reality. We just don't know how the next few years will go when it comes to construction on this stuff. But I love this outlook. I think it's a good one. 2 experiences for the one big one. It honestly made me feel better about it. And our final topic is going to be The Lion King coming to Disneyland Paris. So Disney Adventure Park, which will be the rename of Walt Disney Studios in Paris, is getting a lot of updates. A new lake and like a lagoon show, it's getting Frozen Land, and they announced it will be getting a whole Lion King land. The Lion King land will be centered around a Lion King attraction that looks a whole lot like Tiana's Bayou Adventure or Splash Mountain, a log flume attraction that takes you through Simba's story from kid to king. It looks super, super fun, but our audience has brought up some really interesting criticisms of it that I hadn't even thought about. When polled about The Lion King in Paris, 52% said so excited, 45% of our majority American audience said cool but wish for this in the US instead of 2 Tiana Bayou adventures, and 3% said I don't like the concept. So actually a pretty popular one. Only 3% said they don't like the idea. Sally9972 said, I'm from the UK and even I think Paris is freezing cold in winter. A water ride will be crazy. I didn't think about this at all. That is wild. A water ride in Paris? It snows there. Like, a lot of people are saying for 9 months of the year, this is just gonna be an unpleasant attraction. And like, yeah, maybe they won't do as big of a splashdown on this ride. Like, it might be a different brake system. I know that like a couple of years ago, I saw a patent for a Disney water ride brake system that was different than the one used for Splash Mountain originally. So maybe it will be less of a splashdown, or they'll be able to turn it down in the winter, but that's wild. Because Disneyland and Disney World are warm, and so is Tokyo Disney. I mean, it gets cold in Tokyo Disney where there's a Splash Mountain, but that is so interesting that they are doing an e-ticket water ride in a cooler place. So that'll be really interesting to see. Laura Blair 83 said, being from the UK, Paris has needed newness for a long, long time, so can't wait. I'm also super excited about all of the Paris updates. I've never been, but I've obviously done a lot of reading on the history of Euro Disney and Disneyland Paris, and I think that this is a great way for Disneyland Paris to move in its next era. And I think that Lion King is a great addition to what will hopefully be a really awesome update to this park. Famarun said, only confused because the concept art has the live action version, but the model has the original. This is confusing, but they did say it would be the animated. They said that it would be based on the original movie. So no fears, live action haters. It should be the original animated Lion King. And Aaron D03 said, would be cool in Animal Kingdom. I agree this would be cool in Animal Kingdom. And I would love for us to not have Cali River Rapids anymore and have a better water ride. So maybe one day, who knows? If it goes well in Paris, maybe we get it. Then we'd have 2 Splash Mountain log flume style rides, but I wouldn't complain. So as you can see, there are a lot of big feelings about the news that Disney has announced. And we will of course be keeping you updated, especially on some of this scary stuff like the fate of beloved attractions in Hollywood Studios or entire areas of Disney California Adventure. So keep an eye on our channel, on our social media, and on our website for all of the latest updates. If you have any thoughts or opinions that I didn't share in this video about some of the updates, please drop them in the comments. And if you disagree with me, totally fine. That's part of the beauty of it, is we're all Disney fans and we all get to have big different opinions. I would love to hear what you think about all the new updates in the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe. And now go watch my full coverage of all of those D23 updates. I'll see you there.